Let us now request for the 3 refuges and 5 precepts. Formal request for taking the 3 refuges and 5 precepts. Madhyam Bante Ti Saranena Saha Pancha Silani Yachama Dutiyampi Madhyam Bante Ti Saranena Saha Pancha Silani Yachama Tatiyampi Madhyam Bante Ti Saranena Saha Pancha Silani Yachama.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tisarana gamanang nitthitang.
Amabante.
Panatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Anatipata viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Adinadana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Adinatana viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Kame sumichachara veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Ame sumichachara viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Musavada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Musavada viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Surameraya majjapamadatthana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Surameraya majjapamadatthana viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Imani panchasikhapadani silena sugating yanti silena bhoga sampada silena nubuting yanti tasma silang visodhaye.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay, very good.
Let us recollect the sublime qualities of the Buddha.
You want to start, or do you start, or do I start? I would like you to start.
Okay, how is that?
Can you do that?
I can do that. I can
Okay.
do that.
Good.
Iti piso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho vijajarana sampano sugato lokavidu anuttaro purisa dhammasarati satta deva manusana Buddho Bhagavati. Let us recollect the sublime qualities of the Dhamma. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Sanditiko Akaliko Ehipasiko Opanyayiko Pachatang Veditavu Vinyuhiti. Let us recollect the sublime qualities of the Sangha. Supatipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Ujjupatipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Nyaya Patipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Samichi Patipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Yadidam Chattari Purisa Yugani Atta Purisa Pugala Esa Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Ahuneyo Pahuneyo Takineyo Anjali Karanyo Anutaram Punyaketa Lokasati. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay, very good. Okay, good. So how's everyone doing this morning? Everyone doing well? Everyone happy? And what are you doing here? You should go home. Buddhism is for ones who are suffering. Didn't you hear about that? If you're happy, never mind. Enjoy life. When you suffer, come and see us. Usually life is a bit of both, right? And so in our Dhamma practice, we try to make the suffering grow and the happy. Is that right? Hang on. Is that right? No, it's the other way around, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, thank you. I've learned something this morning. So we want to make the happiness grow, right, and the suffering diminish, and hopefully to find freedom. All right. Now I have a quick question for you. Who thinks meditation is easy? Who thinks meditation's hard? All right. Who thinks letting go is easy? Thank you. My sister at the back there. Excellent. Who thinks letting go is hard? Okay, all my brothers and sisters now, so that's good. Okay, who thinks letting go is hard? Okay, so I'm going to, so we know meditation is about letting go, right? Yes. And so I've got some people coming just in time. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming. So actually the opposite is true. Meditation is just about letting go. And letting go is easy and holding on is hard. And I'm going to prove it. Okay? Here is a, what do you call it? A gong beating stick thing? Gong beater. Okay, a gong beater, I don't know. Okay, here's the gong beater. So I'm going to hold this gong beater, right? So when you're in your hand, you have two sets of muscles. One set of muscles for holding on and one for letting go. Yeah? The muscles for holding on are very strong, right? In fact, they're so strong that you can hold on with just those few muscles in your hand, and you can hold your entire weight on that. They're actually really super strong. But the muscles on the back of your hand, these are the ones for letting go. They're very weak, aren't they? Yeah? You're a Dr. Yo, you're a doctor, right? You can confirm, am I right or wrong? This is true, okay? We have an expert opinion now. So why are the letting go muscles weak? Because letting go is easy. Holding on is hard. Yeah? Holding on is what takes effort, what takes energy. Letting go is easy. Just let go. So we tell ourselves all the time that letting go is hard, or we tell ourselves meditation's hard, these things, but this is just a story that we tell ourselves in our mind. The reality is that letting go is the easiest thing in the world. And meditation is just the path of letting go. That's it. So do you want to know the real secret to meditation? Yes? You want to know the secret? God, people are so easy to manipulate. It's incredible. Just you tell them it's a secret and they're like, oh, yeah. Of course, there's no secret to meditation. People have been teaching it for 2,500 years. Yeah. Most of when we as meditation teachers, and we teach meditation, we teach all of these methods and all of those kinds of things. None of that matters, actually. It helps a little bit. But what matters is being able to let go. If you can find that place where you let go, then all of those methods and teachers and teachings, they don't really matter. So would you like to do some meditation this morning? Yes? Okay, great. Should we do some guided meditation or just silent meditation? Which one would you like? Guided meditation. You want to do some guided meditation? That means you can't do anything without a voice in your head whispering and telling you what to do the whole time. Is that right? So is that what I'm hearing you saying? Fair enough. And what kind of meditation would you like to do? I'm going to give you 3 options. You can choose, all right? Number 1, mindfulness of breathing. Number 2, loving kindness. Number 3, death. Okay, so how many do you want to do mindfulness of breathing? Okay, who want to do loving kindness? Okay, who wants to do death? All the weirdos. I love it. Excellent. Which one was more? I think loving kindness and death was about equal, right? We'll do a runoff, okay? So now who wants to do loving kindness? Okay, and who wants to do death? So I think loving kindness won. I think the death enthusiasts are perhaps more energetic but fewer in number. Okay, we'll do some loving kindness meditation. Very good. So I'm going to teach you briefly some of you have been on my metta retreat we did about this time last year, actually. And so some of you will know the technique that I'm going to be teaching, but for those of you who don't, just very briefly, we're going to begin by doing metta for ourselves. We're going to do metta for a loved person. And I want you right now to think of a loved person who you can do metta for, okay? Just one loved person. And the thing with metta meditation is you want to do metta for somebody who you love the most simply, not necessarily the one you love the most strongly, the one you love the most simply. You want to make this as easy as possible, right? So just one person. You can do it like a different person each time you do the meditation, that's fine. But in the meditation, just one person. Don't try to do everyone all at once. All right, so let's begin. As we sit quietly, take a minute to just let your body settle back into its posture. Feeling peaceful. And leaving your mind settled in your heart, say to yourself the words, may I be happy, may I be happy, may I be happy. And repeating those words again and again and again. Smoothly, steadily, making a firm foundation for your mind. May I be happy, may I be happy, may I be happy.
And as you say those words to yourself, notice that along with those words, there's also the feeling of metta, a gentle feeling of warmth, love, radiating and filling through your body, making you feel peaceful, feel settled. And soaking through every cell, every pore of your body, this beautiful loving kindness, so very soft. Now moving to metta for a loved person. May that loved one be happy. May that loved one be happy. May that loved one be happy. Keeping your metta safe and clear inside your own body. May that loved one be happy. May they be happy. May they be happy. Keeping those words steady and strong. Keeping the mind focused and clear. Keeping the metta flowing through your whole body. May that loved one be happy. May that loved one be happy. May that loved one be happy. Just putting the name of that loved person into the words of metta. Now spreading metta to everyone in this room. May all the people in this room be happy. May all the people in this room be happy. May all the people in this room be happy. And then bringing mind back into the body. May that loved one be happy. May I be happy. And letting the words of metta go. Letting the feeling of metta fade away. And allowing the mind to come back to a neutral place. Empty, open, and clear. And with your mind open and clear, just take a minute to reflect back over your meditation, inquiring into cause and effect. Ask yourself how that was. What happened? How did your mind change? Did you feel what that feeling of metta was like? And finally, we can dedicate the merit of our practice. May all beings be happy. May all beings be well. May all beings realize Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So welcome to all the people just coming now. So glad that you could make it. Don't worry, you just missed all the boring bits. Good stuff is still to come.
Okay, so look, I do apologize if I'm yawning occasionally. I promise you it's nothing personal, okay? It's not that I find you boring company, okay? It's just that I'm a bit jet lagged. Came back from, I've been in Europe for the last 4 months, went there in October. And I've been doing a bunch of different retreats in Norway, Sweden, Poland, Germany, Switzerland, Italy, Belgium, and England. I think that's all. So, so that's been fun. And it's been very enjoyable for me because everyone's saying, like on my first retreat, right? Because I get there and everyone's like, oh, you must be so cold and how can you survive and all of these kinds of things. And then I found out that like after the evening meditation, they're like going out in the middle of the night and breaking the ice on the lake and jumping in. When I found out about that and they said, do you want to come? Oh, that's very kind. Thank you. Anyway, so so yes, I've just been last week or so. I've been in Oxford with my Dhamma friend, Venerable Chanda. He's also one of Ajahn Brahm's students, one of the bhikkhunis starting a monastery there in England. So that's very nice. So if any of you are in England, around Oxford especially, then go and see Venerable Chanda at Anukampa. I feel like my 5 aggregates are kind of slowly making their way over the ocean. They haven't kind of all quite made it here yet, but hopefully they'll all make it through customs. By the way, sorry, do we have a buzzing noise going on in the PA? Is it? Okay. Machines, right? There's too many of them. Who thinks there's too many machines? Me. Yes. Anyway, so oh, that's right. Yeah, sorry. My brain's not working. Yeah, so I was on the flight yesterday, and you know how I don't know if you've ever been on a flight where they do that thing, oh, is there a doctor in the house? Yeah. Actually, I knew there was something up because I went to go to the toilet and the entire flight crew was gathered around the toilet with worried looks on their faces. And I'm like, no, this cannot be good. So yeah, then a few minutes later, there was this poor woman who they were carrying down the aisle, and they carried her down and they took her upstairs to give her a place where she could have somewhere to lie down, I guess. So it's all a bit worrying, isn't it? I said to one of the flight crew, I said, like, I'm not a doctor, but if you need a monk. I mean, if she's a little bit too far gone, then sometimes you need a bit of spiritual help. And so they told me, the flight attendant said, oh no, she's resting peacefully. She's just fainted or something. She's resting peacefully. And I said, oh, okay. Inward side, I was thinking, yeah, that's what they would say, right? Right? So was she dead? Or was she just resting? So we flew the whole rest of the way back. And like everybody in the plane knew that there was something wrong, but nobody said anything. And we just pretended like everything's fine. That's what you do, isn't it? You go along and you pretend that everything's fine. So, I mean, that is kind of what we do, right? We like to hide and we like to think everything's okay. And of course, that's what Mara does.
likes to hide things and pretend everything's okay. And then when we get a glimpse of what the reality is, then it can be quite disturbing. Before I go, I'm going to be talking about a sutta in a minute, but before I go and talk about the sutta, I just wanted to say just a couple of words about what's happening at the moment, especially what's happening in the United States. Because as you know, there's been very disturbing developments. I'm not sure how much you're following it or whatever in the last while. And I think it's important that we don't let them be just like a dead person on the plane that nobody talks about. Just to acknowledge that all of us have friends and family in the United States, or we've been there to visit, or at the very least, we watch the movies that they make, or we drive their cars or something, or we do business with them, right? And so we live in a global and interconnected world, and we're not separate. Nobody's separate from anywhere else, and especially when it comes to the United States. When we're flying yesterday, we flew 11,000 kilometers, and I'm going over all these different countries, and I'm thinking, actually, all of these countries are all connected, and none of them are separate, and none of them are separate from what's happening in America. And I want everybody to be really clear about that everything's changed now. In Buddhism, we talk about impermanence. And one of the things about impermanence is that things change, and they change badly sometimes. And that's real. We shouldn't try to ignore it or deny it or hide away from it. And one of the reasons why evil ascends is because good people think that it can't. Because you see all the warning signs and you think it can't happen. It can't really be true. And I just want you to know that it can happen. And if you're thinking it can't happen here, by golly, it can. Because it's not about a particular political system or a particular economic system or a particular person or anything about that. It's about the potential for evil, which each one of us has in our hearts. And each person has that potential. So unless we can find a way to recognize that and to stop it, then it grows and it spreads. But just because it happens there does not mean it has to happen here. And if we want to help our friends, and if we want to help all of the people who are suffering, then the best thing we can do is to be happy. That's the best revenge, because they want you to suffer. Right? They want you to suffer. They want you to feel oppressed. They want you to feel lost. They want you to feel overwhelmed. Yeah. Don't let them snare you. Get away from your screens. Don't just consume news and social media all the time. Inform yourself. Sure, find some good people who know what's going on. Inform yourself. Then put it away. Do some meditation. Do some Dhamma practice. Be with your friends and your family. Go for a walk. Because what matters is life. And what matters is you. And evil is very boring. It's always the same. And people don't learn the lesson and they think this is something new or something, but it's just always the same. It never creates anything, it only destroys. So be a light and be a lamp. Yeah? And if we light the lamps and we keep them burning, then maybe they can find their way home. Yeah? Maybe that's how we can help them. Okay, so now time for some sutta. Oh, right. Right, here we go. Coincidentally, about Mara. Very politically relevant, right? So who can tell me who's Mara, by the way? Who's Mara? Trump. Okay, that is an insult to Mara. Come on. Mara wasn't that bad. Okay, but anyway, okay, but fine, fair enough. Okay, anyone else? Who's Mara?
Come on. Yes, go on. Your bad self. Okay, thank you. Yeah, anyone else? Yeah. A fallen angel, right? Yeah. Yeah. 5 aggregates. Okay. Anyone else? Defilements. Okay, thank you so much for that. We have all these very different answers. Which one is right? All of them are right. Yay, everybody. Round of applause for everyone. Okay, very good. Actually, Mara is used in a variety of different ways in the suttas in the Buddhist traditions. And it's always used, Mara's always used kind of in a playful way. So even though in some ways, yes, he's like this demon or Satan figure or something, but he's always a bit of a fool as well. And so the stories about Mara always have a kind of a lightness to them and a humor to them. And so Mara acts as the deluder, right? So he masks reality, takes on the forms of illusions. But in doing so, he is also death. In fact, etymologically, Mara means one who causes death, i.e. a killer or murderer. And I'll tell you a story about Mara. Do you want to hear a story about Mara? Do you want to know how Mara was finally converted to Buddhism? Did you know that Mara became a Buddhist? So this happened about 150 years after the time of the Buddha. And at that time, it was the time of King Ashoka, and there was a very famous monk called Upagupta. Upagupta is one of my favorite monks. And I don't think you have an Upagupta here. If you go to most Burmese temples, you'll see an Upagupta image. I know they have a big one in the Penang Buddhist temple. I'm not sure about Singapore, but probably they do. Usually Upagupta is like off to the side a bit. He's not at the main temple. And classical Upagupta image is he's holding his bowl in his hands like this. His hand is up like that, and he's looking at the sun. Like that. And you ask people why, and they say, because he's eating his meal. It's nearly 12 o'clock and he's not full. So he's using his psychic powers to stop the sun. So he can keep eating. Huh? Technically, it's not midday yet, right? Anyway, Upagupta is very interesting historically because he's from northern Buddhism and he's found all through Burma and Thailand, but not in Sri Lanka at all. And he's not found in any Sri Lankan text. He's only found in one Pali text, which is a Pali grammar from Burma, which has an example sentence. It says, Maro badho Upagutena, Mara was bound by Upagupta. And that's all it says. That's it. That's the only reference to Upagupta in the whole of the Pali Canon. But if you go to a remote village, I was staying in northeast Thailand, Isan on the Mekong River, and I asked the villagers, have you heard of Pra Upakut? And they're like, oh, Pra Upakut, yeah, he's really good. They do a ceremony for Pra Upakut every year, even though he's not in any Pali text. So he's part of the Buddhism that was in the region before Pali Theravada Buddhism came. And so he's associated with a lot of different kinds of stories. But this is one of the stories about Upagupta. So Upagupta was very accomplished, great teacher, great leader, but he always had one regret, and that was that he came too late to see the Buddha. And he never saw the Buddha when he was alive. So when Upagupta was teaching, Mara tried to disrupt him. And sorry, can we turn the microphone down a little bit? We've got some ringing at the top there. Thanks. Very good. Welcome. Should I begin the story from the beginning, or were you okay? Are you sure? So we're about 150 years after the Buddha now, right? And we're talking about a monk called Upagupta, all right? So Upagupta was so successful in teaching Dhamma that Mara got really worried and tried to disrupt him, doing all these kinds of tricks. And eventually Upagupta had had enough, and so he created the image of a dead dog and then hung it around Mara's neck. And Mara was just disgusted. This horrible, stinking, flea-ridden, disgusting corpse of a dog was hanging around his neck. And Mara was like, "Oh, I can't get this off. This is terrible." And he begged Upagupta, "Release me." And Upagupta's, "No, you deserved it. You're Mara." And Mara's like, "What? This Upagupta, he's so cruel. He's so nasty. God." And you think about it, right? Think about all the terrible things I did to the Buddha. Did he do this to me? No. Right? I would do terrible things. The Buddha would be like, "I know you, Mara," and I'd be like, "Yeah, fair cop, okay," and I'd be out of there. And then that was it. That's how the game is played, right? That's how it works. But this Upagupta doesn't know the rules. He's overstepped. Now he's hung this dead dog. You're thinking, actually, the Buddha was actually pretty kind, really. I mean, he was a really nice guy to put up with all of my tricks. And then he realized how much he owed to the Buddha, how many terrible things that he'd done, and how gentle the Buddha had been with him. And he was filled with gratitude. And tears came to his eyes. And that's how Mara became a Buddhist. And when he did that, then Upagupta said, "Okay, now took the dead dog off his thing." So now Mara's okay. And Mara said, "Oh, thank you so much to Upagupta for showing me the Dhamma." And Upagupta said, "This is my job as a teacher. Don't mention it." And Mara said, "What can I do for you?" Upagupta said, "Don't worry." Mara said, "Anything. I'll promise you I'll do anything for you." And Upagupta said, "Well, there is one thing." Mara says, "Just name it." Upagupta said, "You were alive in the time of the Buddha, right?" He said, "Yes." "You know what the Buddha looked like?" "Yes." "And you're the master of illusions. So you could take on the form of the Buddha so that you look just like the Buddha." And Mara's like, "Well, yes, I could. Should I though?" And Upagupta's like, "You promised." And Mara's like, "Okay, I'll take on the form of the Buddha, but under one condition. Even though I look exactly like the Buddha, you're not allowed to bow to me because I'm still Mara." And Upagupta says, "Okay, sure." So then Mara takes on the form of the Buddha, and he looks so beautiful and so elegant. Upagupta couldn't help himself. Down on his knees, bowing to Mara. So this is the story of how Mara was bound by Upagupta and how Mara became a Buddhist. Which, by the way, in case you're wondering like what the point of that story is, one of the purposes of that story is as an origin myth for the Buddha Rupa. Because we're now, at one point, the Buddhist community decided to start making images that look like the Buddha, but is not the Buddha. So should we bow? And you can see the Buddhist community was a bit uncertain about that. Anyway, okay, so now we're going to move on to the sutta. We're doing great so far. We've got a few minutes left. Okay. They speak of this thing called Mara. Venerable Radha went up to the Buddha, bowed, sat down to one side and said to him, "So they speak of this thing called Mara. How is Mara defined? When there is form, Radha, there may be Mara, or the murderer, or the murdered." So here that's leaning on the etymological sense of Mara as being the murderer or the murdered. You should see form as Mara, the murderer, the murdered, the diseased, the boil, the dart, the misery, the miserable. Those who see it like this see rightly. When there is feeling, perception, choices, and consciousness, there may be Mara, the murderer, and the murdered. Those who see like this see rightly. So this is the sutta that defines Mara as the five aggregates. Of course, the five aggregates are Mara because they're not really what they seem. But here, especially because they are the murderer, they are the dead. That's why we die, because we have the five aggregates. Sorry, so can someone remind me what those five aggregates are again? Form, feeling, perception. You don't seem to be sure about that one, but anyway. Last one, consciousness. Okay, fine. I'm going to just very briefly try to explain what each one of those is. So form is the material dimension, right? So it means matter and so on. But it also means the form is not just physical, not just like matter, right? Form in Pali actually has two kinds. We call Olarika Rupa and Sukkama Rupa. The Olarika Rupa is the physical form like we see around us. Sukkama Rupa is like the energy or the subtle body or the subtle form, which might be one of the dimensions of that Sukkama Rupa is that it is the form that we perceive in our mind. This is something that people often don't quite get. Rupas can be perceived only in the mind. So we can perceive sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch, and these are all part of rupa. But if we imagine, for example, if you imagine a pink elephant in your mind, that pink elephant is also rupa, right? Because it has those physical properties. So rupa is not like the objective material world like it is in science. Rupa is the perception of physical properties by the mind, right? So it can be either through the 5 external senses or in the internal sense. So this is rupa, the first of the 5 aggregates. Then Vedana is feeling, pleasant, painful, or neutral. Feeling is the main driver of our behavior, right? So feeling pulls us towards something or pushes us away from it, right? So don't think of these 5 aggregates as things, right? Sometimes these 5 aggregates are described as like being components that make up the person or something like that. I don't really like that way of talking about them because these are all things that are dynamic. They're processes or behaviors, right? They're the way things work rather than the way things are. Feeling pulls you towards or pushes you away or makes you not care. Feeling perception is how you recognize or interpret or see things. So perception takes what we see through the senses and it makes sense of the senses, right? So perception, when I look over there, I can see there's a wall and a door. And perception tells me, well, no, I don't see there's a wall and a door. Actually, I just see color. I just see light. My physical eye sees light. Perception recognizes, oh, this is a wall and this is a door. That's very handy because you can walk through a door and you can't walk through a wall, which is very useful information to know. Make a note of that. That'll come in handy later on, okay? So perception teaches us how the world around us works, how it's organized, and allows us to function in the world. Right? Choices are those choices of sankharas is how you function. So perception recognizes it's a door or a wall. Sankharas choose to walk through the door or walk through the wall. Or try to walk through the wall anyway. So sankharas is what actually motivates you and moves you into doing things, but especially, right? Especially those things that have a moral dimension to them. Okay, so sankharas can be in any kind of choices or volitions and so on, but especially moral choices to do good or choices to do bad. And finally, we have consciousness. Consciousness is awareness of sights, awareness of sounds, right? You see sights with your eye, right? But your eye consciousness doesn't see consciousness. It doesn't see itself. Eye consciousness sees sights. Ear consciousness hears sounds. When we're developing meditation, we are purifying our consciousness. We're making our awareness know better. Our cognition is working better. This is why when you first sit down to meditate, what happens? First of all, you're thinking about everything. Blah, 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 mind's off thinking about this, thinking about that. And meditators think that that's a problem. I sat down to meditate, my mind, what was happening? Oh, my meditation was no good. I was thinking about things. No. That doesn't mean your meditation is no good. That means you are becoming aware of your thoughts. You were already thinking about things, you just didn't know it. And when you sit, like, you'll get an itch. And you'll be like, oh my God, itch is like, it's like that's so bad, and you're like, oh my God, we got like climate change, and there's plastic pollution, and there's like the Nazis just took over America, and oh, but this itch is like really bad. You can't, but it said, and it's just like pulling at your awareness, and you can't stop thinking about it. Yeah, that's your awareness becoming purified, because you're now more clearly aware of things, and you see them, right? As it says in the suttas, you see them as a boil, a dart, the misery and the miserable. That's what it feels like. You have this itch. In fact, one of the suttas talks about the 5 khandhas as being like itches and being itchy, which is very much how it feels when you sit down to meditate, and all of these things feel a bit unsettled, a bit not quite there. So if we see these things, we see them rightly. Now, is the purpose of the Buddha so that we should just see that everything is like that? Or what's the purpose? What's the point? And so Radha then goes on and asks the Buddha, what's the purpose of seeing rightly? Disillusionment is the purpose of seeing rightly. Yeah. So we turn away from it. We get attached to it. What's the purpose of disillusionment? Dispassion. What's the purpose of dispassion? Freedom. And what's the purpose of freedom? Extinguishment or nibbana. And so this is where this practice leads to. Extinguishment is the going out of greed, hate, and delusion, the going out of the fires of suffering. And so the purpose of this practice is to be able to let go. Now, the Buddha taught us that we are impermanent. He taught us that we suffer. He taught us that we cannot control that we are not self. But even more than that, above and beyond that, he taught us that we can transcend. He taught us that we can let go. And he taught us that by following the simple and very pure practices of the Dhamma, that we can learn to understand the nature of our own heart and be able to let go. There's a beautiful sutta called the Attadanda Sutta, where the Buddha talks about why he left home. And it says that every direction he saw, he found only fear and danger. It was as if all of the directions were being tossed around like on a boat at sea. He felt that people were always taking up arms against each other, and that he felt like a fish flopping around in a dried up stream. And he made this very pointed observation. He said people always looking for somewhere to settle down, but even when they've settled down somewhere, they still fight with each other. And so he became filled with this agitation and despair. That's when he began looking, where does this come from? And he saw this dart of craving inside his own heart. And so this teaching of the Buddha is very challenging, because it calls on us to take responsibility for our own suffering. Not easy. Yes, not easy. Much easier to blame people, right? Yes. Lots of people to blame. Blame politicians, blame your husband, neighbor, boss. That's a good one. Blame your kids. So many people to blame. But if you think about it, when you go around blaming people, it's actually making an excuse. Oh, I can't really do anything about this because something that's out of my control. If it's our craving which is causing the problem, then we also can let go of it. And that is a very powerful and beautiful part of the Buddha's teachings, that you can find your own way to let go. And finally, the sutta ends up with, what's the purpose of extinguishment? What's the purpose of nibbana? And the Buddha replies, your question goes too far, Radha. You couldn't figure out the limit of questions, for extinguishment is the culmination, destination, and end of the spiritual life. So the Buddha encouraged people to ask questions, as I'm going to be doing in just a minute. But it's interesting though, isn't it? Right? The question goes too far. Actually, Radha was declared the great. Radha later became. Radha asked about these kinds of questions many, many times, and the Buddha had to keep on giving him the same teachings again and again. According to the commentaries, Radha had ordained later in life, so he's quite elderly. Maybe that's why he was a bit slow to catch on. Not as not as fast as some of those young whippersnippers like Sariputra and Moggallana who could get it really quickly. And he had to get the teaching again and again, but he always listened and he always paid attention. And the Buddha said that he was very good for prompting explanations. And ultimately, he got it, yeah, because of his humility and his wisdom, and he understood and he became free. So this is just a very brief discussion about Mara. Many things to be said about Mara, and I think that it's not really controversial to say that Mara is, despite the fact that he was supposedly converted to Buddhism by Upagupta. I don't know about that story though, because he seems to be fairly successful these days, and have many new tricks up his sleeve. But anyway, but I might turn it over to some questions. What do you think? Is that a good idea? Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions from the floor? Okay.
So I'm thinking, should we think of Mara as a real entity, like a devil, a Western devil, or should we be thinking about it as something in our minds, like our defilements? Which answer is better?
Which answer is better?
Yeah, or which answer should we use in our daily life?
In your daily life,
Yeah.
as opposed to which other life?
I don't know. As opposed to like in a horror movie, I mean, Mara would be like a demon or something. But in our daily life, if we
That's
don't
an
really
awesome idea.
experience supernatural things, then she would just take it as like defilements.
Is anyone here a filmmaker? I think making that would be fantastic. That would be awesome. You could do like a whole horror movie where you could do like, actually when I was in Norway, because in Norway they really like their murder mysteries. So we had this idea, we do one like Murder on the Retreat. So like you come out for meditation every time and there's like one less person in the meditation group. And eventually people kind of start to notice, So maybe Mara is like one of the retreatants, and then you have to unmask him and see which one it is. Yeah. And then at the end, you're like, why did you do it? Why did you do it? And you're like, I couldn't help it. They were just breathing so loudly. I was doing everyone a service. Anyway, so look, because we got all those different answers at the beginning, and according to the Buddhist tradition, there's 5 kinds of Mara. So basically that's talked about in different ways in different places. So here it's obviously talked about in a metaphorical way. Other places, then there's a deva or something like that who's appearing as Mara. So there's many different kinds of Mara. So in the suttas, it really depends on the context. So as for how you take that, right? Well, one thing, think about like, you've probably seen like there's like Buddhist images or paintings where they do like the attack of Mara, and Buddha's sitting under the Bodhi tree, and Mara's got all his armies and there and attacking the Buddha and these kinds of things. So is that a photograph? I don't think so. I don't think they had photographs there. That comes from someone's imagination, right? Why do they depict that? They depict that because it's a way of showing that in a visual sense, right? So you can show that conflict visually. So all these are stories which have been told in order to illustrate a point. That's the main thing. Whether there was really a deva called Mara who would come and do these things, I can't say because I wasn't there, right? Or if I was, I've forgotten. If I was, I obviously didn't do my meditation very well. So yeah, so you can, take it as stories if you like, take it as take it per context. Yeah. All right. No worries.
Any other questions from the floor?
At the back there.
Thank you, Ajahn. May I ask which sutta were you referring to, like the number, the name?
Just this one we're just talking now. That's Samyutta Nikaya number 23.1. The is just called Mara Sutta. But it's in the Radha Samyutta, so it's in the 𝐾𝐽𝑑𝐿𝑜𝑤𝑠ℎ𝑖𝑝, the 𝐾𝐽𝐽𝑑𝐿𝑜𝑤𝑠ℎ𝑖𝑝, which is in the third book of the third Samyutta Nikaya, and the main part of it is the Khanda Samyutta, and just following that is the Radha Samyutta. There's a whole series of suttas with Radha in them. Oh, there you go. Someone's got it up there. Very good.
If there are no more questions, I guess I have just one from...
One down the front.
Thank you, Ajahn. I would like to clarify what the sutta meant when we should see the five aggregates as the murderer, the murdered, the deceased, boy, the dead, the misery, and the
You want me to
misery.
go into more detail into the murder and misery part of it? Awesome. What would you want to know specifically?
Thank you. Like, is the body killing me? Am I being killed by the body?
Right? Well, what do you think?
Yes.
If you didn't have a body, would you be being killed?
No. Yes.
Not quite sure if it's a trick question or not. That's very wise. Yeah. But right, so our form is kind of both killing us, but also being killed by us, right? So, but I mean, you can think of it as just being associated with death or implicated in death because it's impermanent. So I think, but one of the purposes of this really is to try to, it's trying to kind of, in a way, erase that distinction between Mara as an external entity and Mara as the death which is happening inside us, because we are all dying, and we are all also masters of illusion in a way. I mean, kind of we are, aren't we? I mean, we like to present one face to the world and maybe another face somewhere else, yeah? And we think that we're being honest, but, you know, we behave in a certain way. We want people to think about us in a certain way. And that can be perfectly wholesome, right? It's normal. That's how behavior works. But at the same time, like, Mara is not something completely separate from us. And so in a way, that whole question of whether Mara is a deva or not, or whether it's an actual being or not, the whole point of that is that the different kinds of beings, right? All of the dimensions of being in Buddhism are just expressions of your mind. That's it. That's all they are. So the question is it just in your mind or is it out there? Well, if it's in your mind, it'll be out there. And if it's out there, it'll be in your mind, because these two things are two parts of the same thing. This is why people get born in the different animal realms and ghost realms and all of these kinds of things, because we have those things inside us and we have those potentials inside us. So Mara and the five aggregates is always killing us, implicated in death, misery, all of that good stuff. Because if it wasn't, then we wouldn't find freedom. Yeah. When the Buddha's in the Buddha's teachings, like, you find that there's always a balance, right? So there's always the suffering and then the freedom from suffering. Actually, many years ago, we got a book at our library called The Great Sayings of Mankind. And I'm like, okay, does it have anything from the Buddha? So I looked up for the Buddha. Does it have any sayings by the Buddha? And it had There is suffering. There is an origin of suffering. That's it. Just two noble truths. Sometimes things can be summarized a little bit too much, right? It's like a big thick book like this, but they couldn't find room for the last two noble truths, right? But just two noble truths is not really like noble truths. It's kind of mediocre truths, or kind of like just two of them is like the two fairly mundane observations about life, right? The real thing is that there's freedom from suffering. That's the important thing. So these, when these quite challenging or quite dark teachings are given, then that's the point, is to make us to look at that side of things and to be able to find freedom. So the Buddha said that each thing that we can look at it in three ways: as what's good about it, asada, the sweet taste; what's bad about it, the danger that it has; and the escape. Find some freedom from it. Yeah. So normally when we see things, we always want to look at the good side of it. So when in a minute we're going to be finishing up here, we're going to be going and having the meal, and I'm going to sit at the table and I'm going to look, oh yum, all these yummy food. You don't want to imagine what it's going to look like this afternoon, because that would be bad. But actually, one of the things about this reflection is actually very useful, because sometimes if you just like see something a little bit like that, then it can change your whole relationship to it. When I was staying in northern Thailand at one time, the gentleman who was looking after me had a silver company, they made silver ornaments and jewelry and things like that. And he had a Harley Davidson, which he really loved. And he used to make all of these like silver death skulls and stuff like that to decorate his Harley with, yeah. And he said, and he was like very, very attached to his Harley. He built a kuti to come and meditate in the forest. So where I was, so he had a patch of forest, and he built a kuti for me and a kuti for himself. And the kuti he built for himself, he designed it so that he could drive his Harley underneath the kuti and just park it there to keep it safe and make sure that, you know, he could meditate peacefully, knowing that his Harley was going to be out of the rain or whatever. And he said one time he took it to the garage and they had to repair it, and they pulled it all to bits. And then he looked at it and he thought, oh, it's just a motorbike. And just that whole thing just went. I mean, afterwards he still liked his Harley, he still liked driving it, right? But he wasn't so caught up in it anymore. So sometimes just think about things just like that, just a little bit is enough, you know. Maybe you get a package from Amazon, something you've ordered, and you get some new thing or whatever, and you just pause for a minute and you just think, okay, I'm going to open this, it's going to be new, and then a minute later it won't be new anymore, and it'll just be another thing. Yeah, you just reflect like that, and then you're like, oh, okay, and then you're not so attached to it anymore. Yeah. All right. We've got one more question. We've got time for one more. We've got 30 seconds. 29, 28, 27.
I guess this might be
please,
like
take
a
your
rather
time.
long question,
Go on.
because I think like there's like other suttas in the Nikaya that like mention Mara as like the entity, and if I remember correctly, there was like one life that Venerable Mahamoggallana was a Mara, and then
Right.
there was one time that he was meditating, and then he got disturbed by the Mara, and he was having a conversation with the Mara.
Right.
So and there are like many I think like stories like that.
Right.
So I wonder, when we read the suttas, should we take some of the story there like literally, or like whether we should take it as like a, you know, like what's the word for it? It's like a
Metaphorically, yeah.
Because I think the metaphor was the source. Like when people take things as metaphorical, it's kind of the source for a lot of these separation between traditions, because people say that you should take this metaphorically, and then everyone have a different interpretation of what the metaphor means. So what's your advice for when we read those sutras?
Well, well, thank you for that. But I think the important thing to remember is that, we weren't there and we don't have like footage of the event. So we can't really say, right? And so you can say what the sutta says. Does the sutta depict Mara as a entity? Yeah, it does. Yeah. So did that really happen? Well, we weren't there, right? And so we have to, as long as we have a little bit of, hold it, but don't hold it tightly. Yeah, I mean, you're talking about like the way that these things can create divisions and so on in the different people, and that's very true. And people can sometimes create whole different kinds of, movements and so on based on just a different interpretation of a word or something like that. And I think all of that is really just holding on too much. It's just too much attachment. Actually, it doesn't really matter too much. The main thing is to be able to let go. If you think that that's a story which is useful for you, then that's good. But, if you're going to use it as a point to, argue with people and so on, they're kind of losing the point a little bit about what the Dhamma's for. So there's, for myself as a scholar, when I'm doing my translations, then I have to be my goal as a translator is to be as precise as possible, right? And so I'll look at every single word and spend sleepless nights tossing and turning, trying to figure out what the right translation is for things, because often it's not really possible to understand everything about it and all of those things. But we just do our best, But that's my particular dukkha because I've chosen to be a translator. So I spent 3 years in Taiwan translating, and when I went back to Australia, one of the hardest words to translate is samadhi, which is notoriously doesn't really have an English translation. Ajahn Brahm translates it as stillness. Traditionally, it was translated as concentration. I translate it as immersion these days. None of them are particularly satisfactory. And then when I got back to Australia, shortly after I got back, I had went to a conference, and I happened to be sitting at a table with this Aboriginal woman, and we sort of hit it off, and we were chatting about this and that and so on. And she said, "Oh, there are some words in Aboriginal languages that they don't really have equivalents for in English." And so you see, you have to understand that this kind of hits my kind of conceit as a translator, right? I'm thinking, come on, man, I just spent 3 years translating things. Hit me with it. I'm sure we can find a word that will translate into English. So she said, okay. There's a word that have karananga, which means a clear and still and peaceful state of mind. I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, they don't have a word. There's no word for that in English, but we have one in Pali. So maybe we'd like to do some translations into Aboriginal languages if we can, but we so far haven't been able to do it. Anyway, this is getting a bit beside the point, but my point is simply that language is an imperfect medium for conveying these things. So when we're reading suttas, just remember the purpose of the sutta: to educate, to inform, to delight, and to encourage us to practice Dhamma. That's the main thing. And the best, you can sort out all of these things and all of that stuff, but it's not going to get you enlightened. Sorry. I know. I've been doing it for a long time. And you know why? You know why I do it? Why I do all this work? I do it because I love it. I do it because I love the suttas. I love the Buddha's words. And every time that I do that, I've been away for 4 months, and all I can think about is, I can't wait to get back to Sydney, and then I can start work on Sutta Central again. And to me, that's just such a beautiful thing to be able to do. And I know you're rushing us up because we're going to finish, right?
Yes.
Can I have 2 minutes to talk about Sutta Central before we finish?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Or maybe you can you put up there the Sutta Central Pirivena project, so I can just talk about that very briefly. Just go to the home page. Yeah, so I just wanted to mention something for you briefly in case you're interested, and just scroll down a little bit. Cheers, and click on the Pirivena project. Great, there we go. So this is the Pirivena project, which we're doing. I'm just going to talk about it very briefly. We at Sutta Central, we have created translations of the Pali suttas and the Vinaya. I've done the sutta translations, Venerable Brahmani's done the Vinaya translations. And a few years ago, we were contacted by the Sri Lankan Education Department, and they're looking to support English language education for the Sangha in Sri Lanka. And they asked us if we could help. And we said, well, why don't we create printed editions of the suttas and the Vinaya to distribute to the Pirivenas in Sri Lanka. So the Pirivenas are the monastic schools and monastic colleges in Sri Lanka. And so the department was very happy with that proposal, and they consulted with the two Sri Lankan monastic Nikayas, the Siam Nikaya and the Amarapura Ramanya Nikaya, and they reviewed the translations and gave their approval. And so we embarked on this project. So we're currently about 90% of the fundraising done to print these books, and our aim will be to print 1,000 sets of the suttas and Vinaya. So the entire set is 28 books, okay, so 28 volumes. And we're doing a really nice job printing it through a Sri Lankan printing company. And there'll be hardcover, nice cloth binding, all of these kinds of things. And the cloth is being, my favorite part, the cloth is being hand woven by Sri Lankan village women for the books. And so our aim is to print these and distribute them to the Pirivenas. And the reason for me, the reason for doing that is because of my incredible gratitude to Sri Lanka and to Sri Lankan people and the Sri Lankan Sangha for passing down the Dhamma and making it possible for us to have the Dhamma today. And we all have benefited so much for that. I personally have benefited a lot from so many Sri Lankan monks, so many Sri Lankan scholars and teachers and meditation masters, as well as the whole Sri Lankan community. And so much gratitude to Sri Lanka and the Dhamma that she has passed down and made available for us all. And so for me, it feels like an act of service to try to give something back to support the Sangha. And hopefully, through the doors of those Pirivenas, the next Bhante Gunaratana or K.Sri Ramananda will be walking, and they will study those books, and that's how we're going to have Dhamma teachers for the future, is through educating the Sangha. Okay.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. We will now like to request Bhante to lead us in dedication of merits and also request for blessing.
No. Okay, so in memory of Madame Hokwan Shao, who passed away a few days ago, only a couple of days ago. Yeah, she's part of the community here. Okay. Sorry?
She's the mother of a BF member here.
Okay. Okay. Today's the week. Okay. Do you lead or do I lead? I lead. You sure?
Yes.
Akasattha ca bhummattha deva naga mahindika punyang sang anumoditva cirang rakhantu lokasasanang akasattha ca bhummattha deva naga mahindika Punyang tang anumoditva cirang rakhantu dhamma desanang akasattha ca bhummattha devanaga mahindika punyang tang anumoditva cirang rakhantu mam parang Etavata ca amhehis sambhatam punya sampadang sabbe deva anumodantu sabbasvampati siddhya etavata ca amhehi sambhatam punya sampadang Sabbe bhuta anumodantu. Sabba sampati siddhya. Etavata cha amhehi. Sambhatam punya sambhatam. Sabbe sata anumodantu. Sabba sampati siddhya. So let us dedicate the merits of participating in a wholesome Dhamma activity to our departed friends and relatives. Idam me nyatinang hotu sukhita hontu nyatayo. Idam me nyatinang hotu sukhita hontu nyatayo. Idam me nyatinang hotu sukhita hontu nyatayo. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay.
Salutation to the Triple Gem.
Okay.
Om Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivade Atto Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammam Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sangham Namami. Now let us all pay respects to our